Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and this is the Daily Brief. So, 920 Russians are off the battlefield, 9 tanks, 13 armored combat vehicles, 53 vehicles, and fuel tanks. If you look at Andrew Perpetua and you look at his identification of losses, it seems pretty disproportional Russian losses as opposed to Ukrainian losses. Perhaps he missed something, but generally speaking, he does good work. Okay. Ukrainian armed forces reportedly struck a military command post filled with high-ranking officers in occupied Crimea on April 15th. And I didn't see much about this, but I did see this verified in the Kyiv Post, and they didn't say much about it. So what these high-ranking officials were doing, or more about that, I really don't have much to go on there. The SBU also hit a long-range radar in Bryansk region. A couple paragraphs here. This time, the Russians have one less modernized Nebo-U complex, which helped an enemy identify Ukrainian weapons of destruction and supported bombers attacking the Ukrainian border area with bombs. Due to the defeat of this radar, the enemy has fewer opportunities to detect air targets along the northern border of Ukraine. The radar blindness of the Russians will help our troops conduct reconnaissance, launch drones, and make high-quality use of Army aviation in this area, a source in the SBU stressed. So this is actually a big deal. It's a big deal for a couple of reasons. One is that it's worth $100 million, and this is another view of it next. But the other is that it really does keep them from being able to move or deploy their troops as efficiently as they otherwise would be able to. Here's another view of the same thing. Okay. Ukraine downs all 9 drones launched by Russia. That's a good thing, but it's only 9 drones, and we're going to look at only 9 and then where the patterns lie in just a little bit. And when you juxtapose that against what happened in Israel, it's really an interesting thing. Like, why was the U.S. protecting Israel like it was, but not Ukraine? U.S. will not shoot down drones in Ukraine as it did in Israel because it's a different threat picture. Okay. So, asked whether the U.S. is prepared to shoot down Iranian kamikaze drones, as it did in Israel during the Iranian attack, John Kirby said he knew the question would come up. Quote, look, different conflicts, different airspace, different threat patterns. Now, the details about this are that he also stressed that from the very beginning of the conflict, the president, that's President Biden, made it clear that the U.S. had no plans to take part in hostilities in Ukraine. Kirby said that the U.S. provides Ukraine with weapons it needs to protect its airspace. Well, kind of. I mean, it has, and then it all seems to have dried up. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now because we don't have the national security supplemental funding that that's the Ukrainians, so desperately need, and everybody's well aware of that. In fact, it's to the point that we seem that something's about to change, and again, I'm only going to go into a little bit about this, and then we'll talk about it probably more in the 3 big stories, depending on what's going on there. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Monday that his Republican-controlled chamber would vote this week on separate bills for Ukraine and Israel aid, after stalling for months over pressure from his party's right wing. We won't be voting on the Senate supplemental in its current form. So they're not planning to put the Senate bill on the table. They'll put something else, and we'll see how that all plays out. Johnson told reporters on Monday evening, but we will vote on each of these measures separately in 4 different pieces. Now, I'm not sure exactly why that is. I haven't seen all the details, although it looks like they're just chopping it up and putting it out independently. We'll, again, talk about that later. Okay, so, and this is important to understand this too. So, you want to get the picture straight. You don't want to just chase rumors or chase little memes or things along those lines. Johnson, in the closed GOP meeting, says Ukraine needs to stand on its own. Okay, but this is bad wording. He means the bill. The Ukraine bill needs to stand on its own, not be wrapped into something else. He means the bill, not the country. See his second post about it. So just be careful what you read and how that shapes where you're going, because you can go off the rails very quickly in many different ways. Zelenskyy had a interview with PBS, I believe it was. Without the help of the United States, we will not have a chance to win. And I think that's fair. That's what Russia was calculating on. That's why Russia is putting such effort into the propaganda that is causing Marjorie Taylor Greene to oppose Johnson, and Johnson not to be able to put things on the floor for 6 months. And like, that's why the effort is so strong, because the Ukrainians know it, and so do the Russians. Biden hosts the Czech prime minister as he promotes passage of a Ukraine aid stalled in Congress. Again, it's been 6 months, and he's there trying to push on it to see if he can get this through. We signed contracts, this is the Czech prime minister, for 180,000 projectiles for Ukraine, but it's even more than that. Czechia has signed contracts to supply 180,000 artillery rounds for Ukraine within the framework of its initiative, and it's currently working on acquiring 300,000 more. That's absolutely fantastic. But we're working to secure a further 300,000 rounds, and I've already the contracts for 180,000. These will be delivered to Ukrainian front in the coming months, but they need them now. And it's not the Czech Republic's fault. It's just the West has not coordinated and worked through things well enough to make sure that they had a supply. It's both artillery and air defense. Air defense has essentially dried up, and that's what's led to all the damage in recent days. Jay in Kyiv, he generally does really good work, but I want to caution you in this picture. No coincidence that the vast majority of Russian missile atrocities on Ukrainian cities now occur during U.S. congressional vacations. Okay, I'm not picking a fight with Jay in Kyiv. Again, he does great work, but I would warn you that this may or may not be true. Human beings tend to see patterns, whether patterns exist or not. And the pattern, the real pattern that you should be looking for is, do Republicans take lots of, not Republicans, do congressmen take lots of vacations? And they do. It's not really vacations. They go back to their home districts and they listen to their constituents. So it's not even a vacation. Do they do that very often? Yes. Do the Russians do these spiky, like lots of drones and missile strike kind of things very often? Well, they've done it in a pattern of every couple of weeks or so, because they just don't seem to have as much as they should in order to keep a constant barrage. So this may be something, it may be nothing, but you've got to, my broader point here is just be very careful not to see a pattern where there's not a pattern. He could be right. I'm not arguing that he's not necessarily right. He could be. Just be very careful as you think through these things. Jackson Hinkle, here's a pattern. The pattern with Jackson Hinkle is that he's just aligns with the authoritarian leader on whichever side of the equation it is, fairly reliably. Here he is reporting for duty for, I guess that's Iran. I don't know. It could be, yeah, I guess it's Iran. He has an Iranian flag here. Somebody's asking, is this treason? No, it's not treason. It is bad form. And then I went to search to find the original, and I did find the original just to make sure that somebody wasn't making something up about Jackson Hinkle, and I found this on Jackson Hinkle's Twitter feed as well. I'm thinking, so really? So you think it's just Palestine is just restraining Iran from destroying Israel? Is that really what it is? Okay, that's a legitimate pattern. Okay, this is what should be happening in the world. This is just a nature thing where you see a family of elephants, they see a lion and they circle to protect their children. This is kind of what should be happening right now, but it's not. The little baby elephants are right in between their butts. And it's a beautiful thing to see them coalesce like that. And we should be doing that same kind of coalescing. All right. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.